name's Andrea, and today I would like to share with you some thoughts that I have about Psalms 18. When I read Psalm 18, I find the beauty of the words and the way that it's presented is very comforting to me in the trials that I am confronting on a daily basis. So let me read to you a little bit of this psalm. It starts out with a bit of an introduction, and this idea in the introduction is repeated at the end of the psalm, which kind of adds a nice beginning and ending to the message here. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my strength in whom I will trust, my buckler and the horn of my salvation and my high tower. So God is described as a rock, a fortress, a buckler, which is a shield, and a high tower. And when I think of these words, they convey the idea that God is a source of strength and a source of perspective on the trials that we face, that when we have God's perspective, we are less likely to panic because we know that the trials that we're facing are not going to last forever, or that somehow there's a purpose in all of it, and that's kind of how God is like our high tower. So the next thing that the psalm describes is the trials that we face in life. It starts out, the sorrow of death compassed me, and the floods of ungodly men made me afraid. The sorrows of hell compassed me about, and snares of death prevented me. This describes 4 different kinds of trials, and I like to think of it as kind of a cumulative description of trials. The first one talks about the sorrows of death, and I like to think of that as like physical trials that we might have, whether it's sickness or injury or things that lead to our loss of strength. The next one is the floods of ungodly men. I like to think of that as peer pressure or problems with people at work or home. And the sorrows of hell that can pass me about is like the anxiety that we feel when we've done wrong and we might get caught or we might get punished, and so we're in a state of anguish. And the last one is the snares of death, and I like to think of that as a snare being something that catches you, and this is like bad luck that catches you unaware, or some kind of accident or something that surprises you. So in this verse, he says, "In my distress I called upon the Lord and cried unto my God. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came up before him, even into his ears." I feel like when I call upon the Lord, I am usually in distress and very emotional, and he hears me even though he is high up in the heavens, or as it's described in this verse, in his temple. And then the next couple of verses in this section are probably the most beautiful verses that describe God in his power and majesty that I've found anywhere in the Bible. They go from 7 through 15, and when I read through this, I can close my eyes and just imagine him descending in his power to rescue me. And I'm not going to read that for you, but I am going to go on and tell you what his rescue looks like. In verse 16 it says, "He drew me out of many waters." So here we see an image of the floods again that were referred to at the beginning. Then it says, "He delivered me from my strong enemy. They were too strong for me." And when I read those words, I remember that my trials, while they might not seem like anything major to someone else, for me they are very overwhelming, and I have often felt that they were too strong for me and that I was not capable of making it through them. And then in verse 19 it says, "He brought me forth also into a large place." And this idea is very comforting because it makes me think that He is giving me a little bit of space, putting me in a place where I have some options. And when I compare that to how I often feel in my trials, constricted or trapped or confused, I really like that image of being rescued into a large place. Okay, the next couple of verses from 20 to 27 describe the righteousness of the psalmist. And I look at this as a description of how, if we have been doing the best we can, we've been trying hard to follow the Lord's instructions that He's given to us through the Bible, that when we come into times of trials, that we have the promise that He will come for us when we need Him. And the psalmist is kind of expressing this when he says, "The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands hath He recompensed me." And it goes on for a little while, kind of reiterating that idea, and then it says, "For thou wilt light my candle, the Lord my God will enlighten my darkness." And this gives me the idea of how maybe like getting through trials is kind of an act of faith on my part, of relying on the Lord when things are difficult, when I'm struggling, and when He comes for me, when He rescues me, then I feel like my effort to believe in Him was rewarded, and that I was validated in trusting Him, and that makes my ability to trust Him again easier. And so this idea of having a candle lit in my heart is kind of like having that testimony in my heart that I know He'll come for me when I call. And then the next verse says, "For by Thee I have run through a troop, and by my God have I leaped over a wall." The image of a wall is an image of having a barrier that you can't pass, that you're within the confines of the walls that are have been erected in your life, or in the trials that you have. And the image here is that God gave me the strength to leap over the wall. And this isn't something that I would naturally be able to do. This is something that maybe would be an uncommon ability that other people might remain confined within their four walls, but because I turned to God, He helped me to leap over my wall. And then as this psalm sort of winds down, it returns to some of these images at the beginning that I mentioned: the buckler, which is the shield, and the rock that we build our foundation on, and how God is that rock. And there's some imagery here at the end of this psalm of a battle scene, and I think that, for those of us who are fighting really difficult trials and really working to get through devastating circumstances, that it sometimes feels a lot like a battle. I really like how at the end of this psalm it says, "Thou hast also given me thy shield of thy salvation, and thy right hand hath holden me up, and thy gentleness hath made me great." This is an image of strength and support, that God with his right hand has held me, and that his gentleness is what has given me the ability to overcome my trials and has made me great. And as David ends this psalm, he just expresses gratitude for God and the powerful presence that he is in his life. And I just really like this psalm because it speaks to me in the darkest hours of my life, and it gives me an image of God hearing my cry and descending in power and glory to rescue me, and putting me in a place where I can, with agility, navigate the trials that I have. He makes my feet like hinds feet and sets me in a high place, and I feel like, a hind, like a deer up in the high mountains, is able to navigate difficult terrain, and that is how I feel when God has come for me and blessed me, that somehow above my own ability I'm able to get through hard times and feel that he has been there for me, and that he has lit that candle within me to trust in him again next time trials come my way. And I just wanted to share that with you because it is so applicable and relevant to my life, and I thank you for your time.